We begin in Moscow, where U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has met with President Vladimir Putin. The meeting comes ahead of a deadline imposed by President Trump, who has given Russia until Friday to agree a peace deal in Ukraine or face additional sanctions. The White House has not specified what those sanctions might be. Witkoff also met with Putin's envoy for investment and economic cooperation ahead of the talks with Putin. Well, for more on this, we're joined now by DW's Juri Rescheto, who covers Russia from Riga for us. Juri, tell us more about why Witkoff is in Moscow.
Well, Mr. Witkoff will certainly try to convey the urgency of the situation from the American perspective to the Kremlin directly in talks with Putin. You said it, Terry. Such a direct conversation has already been announced by Russian news agencies. Trump's threat is that Russia will be or would be punished if the war is not over by Friday this week. But that would be pretty unrealistic, I would say, and Trump himself, I think, surely understands that. So Putin is unlikely to believe that the new U.S. sanctions threatened by Trump would have a serious impact on Russia. So far, there has been no response from the Kremlin, except for the words, "One shouldn't speak to the Russians in the language of ultimatums," as Kremlin spokesman Peskov said. Nevertheless, Trump clearly wants to see success and is sending his special envoy to Moscow to perhaps move the Russians toward at least a minimal consensus. There is speculation, Terry, in the media that the Russians may at least stop their airstrikes. If the Ukrainians do the same, of course, the fighting on the ground is set to continue. But these are so far speculations. We have to wait for the outcome of this meeting.
What would you say are the chances, Juri, of some kind of breakthrough on Ukraine before Trump's Friday deadline?
Well, I don't expect a substantial breakthrough, but rather a small concession from the Russians so that both sides don't end up empty-handed. Putin doesn't want to anger Trump and understands that he may be missing, so Putin may be missing an opportunity to improve the relations with Washington. Let me remind you, since Trump took office, Russia has been quite optimistic about improving relations with the US. This has been seen, heard, and felt in many words, programs, gestures, and other political statements, as well as in the Russian media. Now, of course, no one wants to see a setback in this positive momentum. Nevertheless, I'm sure that the military aspect is even more important to Putin. His goal is most likely to completely capture the Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson regions in Ukraine, and only then begin negotiations on a peace agreement with Ukraine. The Russian-Ukrainian negotiations, we've seen that in the past, were apparently an attempt by Moscow to convince Trump that Putin doesn't reject a peace agreement. But given the Russian advance in Ukraine, I think Putin doesn't believe that now is the time to end the war, as neither the army nor the people would understand him from his perspective. So Putin probably values his relationship with Trump, but he cannot afford to end the war just because Trump wants him to. So he doesn't want to show to the public, to the Russian audience, the Russian voters, that he is under influence of Donald Trump.
Juri, thank you very much for your analysis there. That was DW's Juri Rescheto in Riga.